All right. Thank you, everybody who's joining us today. We will be talking with a Mr. Cameron Ward about being a medical student and eventually becoming a doctor. So we'll be discussing a little bit about his job and about what brought him to the field of medicine. And then don't forget at the end of this lesson, and once you do the health professions lesson about the career, to please complete your survey to ensure you get credit for the class. And so we're just going to get him to tell us a little bit about why he became a medical student and what being a doctor is about.
Okay, so I guess why I became a medical student is because I really enjoyed science growing up. I found that I was pretty good at, working out problems and like problem solving and stuff like that. But I also found that I was really interested in working with people. And I think combining science and working with people and a little bit of leadership kind of all came together into being a doctor. And right now I'm in medical school and doing classes so that I eventually can treat people and make them healthier and improve their lives.
Well, that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about what your normal day is as a medical student and what you envision kind of your future day as being?
Yeah, sure. So right now I spend most of my time in the hospital. I wake up pretty early in the mornings and get there very, very early, as you probably know. And most of my day is spent in the hospital talking to patients, looking into their information, kind of developing a plan for their healthcare, and developing just a skill set that I can carry with me to when I actually am a doctor. After I get off work from the hospital, I usually spend the rest of my day studying. So it's a lot of studying that goes into medical school. And then I go to sleep and wake up and I do it all over again. Hopefully with enough of that, a couple of years of that, I get to be an actual doctor where I will spend a lot of time in the hospital again, but this time I'll take I'll be in charge of caring for that patient mostly, which right now I'm kind of more like a helping hand, but in the next stage, I'll definitely be the one in charge.
You talk about a lot of hard work and studying and different things. How much of it do you think is hard work versus just being naturally smart? I think a lot of students are like, well, maybe I'm not the top of my class or things like that, but I'm willing to work to get to where I want to be and different things like that. What do you think about that?
I think that it's a combination of both. You definitely have to work very hard. You have to work all the time. You have to work when you don't want to work. You have to keep up with a lot of information. So it definitely helps to be inclined to learning and memorizing a lot of things. But also, if you really care about what you're doing, it makes learning a lot easier. So I'm going to say it's mostly hard work and a little bit of natural skill doesn't hurt.
Well, that's what I would have wanted to hear as a kid. Is that if I try hard enough, I can always hopefully make it.
Absolutely.
And so I think, especially in the field of medicine, we hear about a lot of different types of doctors, a lot of different things you can do. So can you tell us a little bit to students about the breadth of different types of doctors and health professions you can become, or you're choosing?
Yeah. Actually, when I first wanted to become a doctor, I thought, just be a doctor. I had no idea there were so many different kinds of doctors that you could be, and they're all completely different. I want to be an ophthalmologist, which is a mix between an eye surgeon and someone who sees patients regularly treating their eyes. But a lot of students, they first choose which kind of doctor they want to be by going the more medicine route. That's, seeing your patients on a monthly basis, kind of controlling their diabetes or their hypertension, or seeing them as they grow up every year, kind of your internal medicine doctor. And the other kind of doctor is like a surgeon. So they usually don't see their patients maybe as long term. They do see their patients, they do follow up with their patients, but it's mainly the patients are asleep on the surgery bed, and they are just cutting them and really working with their hands a lot. So it really runs the gambit between, a lot of procedures and a lot of, working with your hands, and then treating those patients on a continuous basis, just kind of maintaining their health and treating them as a whole.
I think that's awesome. When you were in middle school or high school, when did you figure out that you wanted to pursue this path? Was it an easy decision, something you always knew, or something you kind of came to later, or even maybe became more confident about later?
Yeah, actually, I've always been good at science and math. So when I was in high school and when I went to college, I majored in chemical engineering. So nothing to do with medicine whatsoever. Um, Nothing. I had no idea about medicine. But then one of my advisors kind of introduced me to medicine. And even after graduating from college, I got more experience in the field. And I came to really understand what it meant to be a doctor, the lifestyle of a doctor, the kind of the mindset of a doctor. And that's really what sold it for me, was kind of getting that firsthand experience. And I really encourage people to find those shadowing experiences and really try to get a feel for what a doctor actually does, because honestly, you don't really know until you've seen it.
That's very true. Just for some of our students who may, only have seen a doctor to get their vaccinations or very, once a year, kind of like how I did, how would you suggest that they go about kind of finding experiences or, being able to talk to people who do this field?
Yeah, I was actually the same way. I knew no doctors except for my own. I have no doctors in my family, no medical professionals at all whatsoever. So actually, the first person that I shadowed was my father's doctor, who works at UT Southwestern. So the very first shadowing experience I had was just my father had asked if I could shadow his physician, and he let me shadow him. So I think that's a really good place to start for someone who doesn't know any doctors and doesn't have any connections with the medical field. Other than that, I think reaching out to physicians that you know of in the community, maybe ask your friends for um, family members who are physicians or know physicians, and see if you can shadow those people. Because honestly, that shadowing experience is really good. And I think medical schools like to see that you've actually done some research into what a doctor is like before deciding, hey, I just want to be this thing I saw on TV.
I think that's very true. And I also think, I don't know if you agree with me, that, it doesn't, you may end up wanting to go into a different field as a doctor, but shadowing anybody in high school or anything like that is beneficial no matter what type of doctor, because it is harder to get experiences that young.
Yeah, absolutely. Like any experience that you have, if you go there and you think like, hey, like this isn't exactly what I want to do, but I could see like this is interesting to me. I want to know more about this, or I wonder what variations of this there are. Every experience is going to be good, and it's just going to add to your knowledge and your experience of the field.
Mhm. I think that's great. And I think kind of one of our next questions is, you talk about you're in Dallas and doing your schooling here, where a lot of our students are, but is this a job that's really offered anywhere in the U.S., and how do people can move in this job?
Um, this job is everywhere. There are there are doctors all over the place. In fact, there are some areas in the country, more rural areas, that are in need of doctors. There's not enough doctors to serve their needs in those populations. So there's a lot of need for doctors right now, all across the country. There, of course, doctors in every specialty, in every city, or in every major city. So if you want to go somewhere and live your life in a certain place, then there's definitely going to be some doctors there, or a need for doctors there. So I think it gives people a lot of space to move around and kind of go to wherever they want. Now, it may be a little more competitive to get a job, say in New York City, where everyone wants to be all the time. So there are plenty of doctors in New York, and maybe they don't need as many, and maybe you have to be pretty competitive to get a job there. But there are doctors, you know, from sea to shining sea.
Uh,
And what was the second half of your question? I couldn't really understand.
once you're a medical student, how will you be moving in your job?
Okay.
Match.
Yeah. So with being a medical student, it's a lot of steps. It might not seem like many steps to the layperson, but for medical students, first you have, of course, get your degree, your undergraduate degree, and then you have to apply to medical schools. And sometimes, if you apply to a school and apply to many schools and you only get accepted at a certain few, you just have to kind of go wherever they accept you. That's usually for about 4 years. And then after that, you have to do a residency. So medical school is just like a general like medicine background. You get to rotate in all the different um, clinical settings that you want to, but residency is kind of where you specialize. So I am hoping to go into an ophthalmology residency after medical school, and that's where they'll train me just in ophthalmology. There's another step beyond that if you choose to do a fellowship. And that fellowship, just like medical school and just like residency, you have to interview at all these different places and then get matched into those places or get accepted into those places. So that's potentially, medical school and then residency and then fellowship. That's potentially 3 different places that you'll have to move around. It could be in the same place if you're so lucky, but if you want to move around, if you want to experience different parts of the world and see how they do things differently, then there's definitely the opportunity for that too.
Well, awesome. And so what job would you choose if you didn't do what you were currently doing right now?
So I did major in chemical engineering, and I love science and I love math, but my dream job would actually be a high school physics teacher. I really, yeah, physics. Like physics is like the central science. We live our life in physics. Just think about like gravity and kinematics, like all these things are just the way things are. And I think that teaching physics would give you a great opportunity to do experiments and just show people, like, if I drop this ball, it's going to fall at this speed, or if I have this magnet here and this magnet here, I can calculate what it's going to do next. I really think the experiments in physics and then the teaching aspect together are what draw me to wanting to be a physics teacher, if not a doctor.
I could see you as a teacher with all the things you're running around in school doing, being involved in mentoring other students. I could definitely see that being a very good fit for you as well.
Yeah, I do love mentorship. I do love teaching, and I do love reaching back to the younger generations and trying to steer them in a positive direction.
Which is why we're doing this. And although it's not in person like we normally planned with the pandemic, we hopefully can still reach students with being on Zoom and implementing the new computer generation.
So I hope all you guys out there are enjoying listening to Whitney's awesome lessons. And thank you for putting this together, Whitney. This is really cool.
Of course. So we're going to ask a couple of questions about education and training, how you got to where you're at now. And so does this job require a high school, community college, technical college, 4-year education? What are the paths that you can take, or are there more than one?
So the path to medicine, or to medical school specifically, The standard is you complete your high school degree, and then you need to get a degree, a bachelor's degree in most places. There are some programs where you can like go into it's like a 7-year program where you only have to do 3 years of undergraduate studies, and then you get 4 more years of medical school. So that kind of shaves off 1 year in there. But those aren't, all over the place. That's kind of special. But honestly, the path to medicine can be whatever you want. So I actually took off some time between college and medical school, like I mentioned earlier, to get some experience in the field, to see if that was what I really wanted to do, and just to get a better idea of what medicine really is. So the standard is degree, 4-year college degree, and then medical school, then residency and perhaps fellowship, and then you're a full-fledged practicing doctor. But it can kind of go wherever you want to take it.
And for our students who are younger and maybe trying to figure out what are the subjects they can focus on now and kind of see what they like, what classes and courses did you really take to prepare for your exam?
So in order to get into medical school, you have to take what's called the MCAT, the Medical College Admissions Test. The MCAT has a lot of science subjects on there, like biology and chemistry. So if I were a student, or when I was a student, those are the kind of the classes I took. The actual like prerequisites or the required classes you have to take in order to get into medical school include the chemistry and the biology and some math. But if I just were taking classes to help me out, it would definitely be those biology classes, because a lot of that first couple of years of medical school require you to know quite a bit of biology. A little bit of background in that definitely doesn't hurt.
Well, that's something definitely students in middle school and high school can pay attention to, since they're all in biology.
Yeah.
Doing that. And so for kind of about your work and your normal week schedule, how many days a week do you normally work? And will this change when you become a doctor?
So right now, I am actually in the hospital for 5 days, all 5 weekdays, and sometimes I'll have a weekend day as well. But honestly, I'm studying every day, even on weekends when I'm not in the hospital. It does still feel like work. But moving forward, when I'm a physician, my specialty, I hope to work the 5 weekdays. And where I've worked before at a doctor's office, they only worked, on the 5 weekdays, and then the weekends were off. So hopefully I can have that same schedule. I know that there are some doctors that may have to work on weekends and stuff like that. And there are some that are actually shift work as well.
And does the hours kind of vary by which type of doctor you choose?
Right.
Those days?
That's absolutely correct. There are certain specialties that have more of a great lifestyle. You can look into those specialties, but those specialties are usually fairly sought after. Things like dermatology or radiology, those lifestyles have a great balance between the time they're at work and the time that they can spend doing their social things or being with their family or stuff like that. So it definitely varies, but there are some that can be pretty nice.
So you said, at first you wanted to become a doctor, and then you kind of figured out, okay, I want to do ophthalmology specifically. Do you think that is how most students feel? Is like you kind of find your passion when you're in medical school and later on, versus, maybe you want to help people and then it progresses to figure out where you want to help people?
Yeah. I think at the core, all of the medical students really go into it because they want to help people. There are some who are just in it for the money aspect or the prestige aspect. And let me tell you, if that's the only thing you're thinking about, studying for 16 hours day is not gonna be fun for you, you know? So if you really like helping people, if you really like working towards people's health, then it's a good field to go into. But honestly, it runs the gambit between deciding early and deciding late what specific specialty you want to go into. I think I read something, some statistic that said orthopedic surgeons, if you want to be an orthopedic surgeon at the beginning of med school, you're 50% likely to actually graduate and become an orthopedic surgeon. And that's the highest. So those people like really know what they're into, but you know, if you have some idea, it's likely to change while in medical school, because you know the shadowing experiences that you had are just the tip of the iceberg on the huge, vast amount of different specialties that you can go into. So I started off knowing that I wanted to do ophthalmology, but I know someone who switched during their 4th year of medical school into deciding they wanted to do interventional radiology or urology or some of those really specialized fields that you don't get a lot of exposure to. So it's not like you have to decide immediately, but you do have to decide eventually.
Yeah, but definitely I feel like middle school and high school is still far away. So I'm sure those students are like, I have plenty of time until, definitely don't have to decide until you at least get into medical school.
Yeah, so much time. And honestly, keeping an open mind is the best way to go about it. Just take every rotation that I enter, I think, you know, this is my shot to be a psychiatrist or a OB-GYN doctor. Like, let's see if this is for me. Let's be all in and really keep an open mind as far as whether I can see myself doing that for the rest of my life.
And while you're doing this, are you working with a lot of other people or are you working by yourself?
Medicine has become a team sport, I think. So there's plenty of people in the hospital where I'm at now. There's the medical student, and we work with a resident and a couple of fellows, and then there's the attending physician who's kind of in charge of the whole thing. So I spend a lot of time working with these people, learning from them, and really developing plans for our patients.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the time, doctors work in teams. I know in surgery, you have like a scrub tech and you have a nurse and you have an anesthesiologist. So most of medicine, I think, is a group setting, but there are still the opportunities to be more secluded. I think there's not much teamwork in psychiatry as a like actual doctor with your own practice. I don't think they work with people too much, but for the most part, you do spend a lot of time with people.
Yeah. And so just some financial questions to kind of wrap us up here is, you know, how much money do doctors normally make, and does it vary by what type of doctor you choose to be?
Yeah, it does. Doctors are usually very comfortable with the amount of pay that they make. The amount of work that goes into becoming a doctor, it pays off in the end. I think physicians usually make anywhere in the neighborhood of like 200,000 a year upwards. Like it can be pretty financially lucrative. I know of a couple of surgeons who make, you know, 500,000 a year and beyond. So if you're like, not that money should be a motivation, but it should be considered, you know, when deciding what you want to do and what kind of lifestyle you want to live. So definitely keep in mind that physicians are well compensated and, you know, typically don't have to struggle financially.
I agree with that. And I just think sometimes we have to remind it's a long route to get to that point, but it, like you said, it pays off in the end with your work pays off with what you end up being able to achieve.
Absolutely.
And so with the pandemic and everything going on, and you saying you've been in the hospital quite a bit, how has your job and what you've seen from other physicians been affected by the change in economy and the pandemic in general?
Yeah, it's actually been a very interesting change we've seen in the medical field. Typically, um, physicians are, they're in high demand. They're always in high demand all the time. You want physicians to be around. But this recent COVID pandemic has really changed the game. So a lot of hospitals like cut down on the amount of surgeries that they do, like elective surgeries, say something that's not life threatening, but you want to do like perhaps like LASIK eye surgery or something like that. Like you're not going to die if you don't have LASIK, but to free up more space, the hospitals decided to cut down on all those elective surgeries, and those are pretty big money makers. So I think during the pandemic, without those extra surgeries that are bringing in all that extra income, the medical field has taken a little bit of a hit. Also, a lot of the older physicians that are kind of used to the old ways, and then with everything having gone online and telemedicine, where you're contacted over Zoom or on the phone, it kind of, it was too much for some people to handle, and some practices closed. I know of one practice that closed because of that. So that lack of physicians adding to the economy really affected the economy, I think, as a whole, because there wasn't that added income. I thought it was a pretty interesting, test of how strong and how healthy our healthcare system is. If we can really handle those hits. And I'm not sure that we handled it well this time, but I think moving forward, we've got a better plan, or we're better able to handle the situation.
Okay. Thank you for your insight on that. And our last question is just going to be for, a middle school student or high school student who's thinking about that, maybe being a doctor would be cool, or going into health professions. What is your advice to them, just briefly, for their journey?
I think the best advice I can give middle school and high school students is to not worry about what people think. And I mean that in a way, like you might, if you're taking all these science classes and you're interested in all these really sciencey things, and people start to like make fun of you and say you're a nerd or something like that, like you're going to be making so much more money than them and helping so many more people and doing what you love if you become a doctor, and just ignore all those peer pressures to, I don't know, do random things or not study as hard or pretend not to be interested in science or something like that. Because I think if I had really done what everyone else was doing when I was in high school or middle school, instead of, working on the science fair or doing activities that I really enjoyed, and instead did something like I was supposed to do, like basketball or football, I don't think I would be in the same position that I am now without taking advantage of those great opportunities to really build my mind and focus on academics. So I said to say, be yourself. If you love science, love it. Like, don't let anyone tell you that you're a nerd or you should be, going out for the football team or something like that. Like, you can do it.
Well, I can say you're one of the most productive and best students that I've met. So I think your advice is worth a great deal to anybody. And I think that, hopefully our students will be able to listen, and if we'll have some activities and lessons just about health professions, not only being a doctor, but also, being a nurse or a physician's assistant. There's a lot of different ways to become involved in healthcare that I think people don't even realize. I didn't know a lot of them existed when I was younger.
Honestly, like if I had known, maybe I wouldn't, maybe I would have chosen differently. I don't know. But yeah, there's a ton of things out there where you can be involved in healthcare and really building people up.
So I think it's great. And I think that you're exactly right. Not, doing what you're passionate about and doing the work you want to do and not feeling pressured by your peers to do something different. I mean, I went to boarding school to kind of surround myself with peers more like me because I felt very different in school. And I think that's the exact thing you're talking about is find a place that, do what you are passionate about and what's going to lead you to a great life and be able to help the people and do your passion.
Exactly, exactly. And before we leave, I just want to thank you for putting this all together. I hope all you students out there are getting some great tips and learning a lot about all the different careers that you can go into. Like, the world is your oyster. You can do anything you want to do if you work hard enough, just like Whitney does.
Well, we'll see. We're both still students here, so we're gonna help each other in the end of the tunnel here to get to the light.
Exactly, exactly.
And to our students, don't forget to finish your surveys for this lesson and make sure you submit it so that you get to your 80%, so that you can then get your certificate. The survey link is at the end of this video as well as in the bio of the video. So thank you very much for joining us tonight.